G'day, I'm Michelle Dyson from the Office of Environmental Programs studying a Master in Environment. I'm here to talk about how maintaining biodiversity and soil health along with the use of technology will be essential for the future sustainability of food production. To address this topic, in part 1, I introduce, define and emphasise the subtopics of biodiversity, soil health and technology as essential for sustainability. Then I present part 2, my case study, which is the sustainability of biotechnology's genetically modified organisms, GMOs. I conclude that this biotechnology is not yet sustainable, so cannot be essential for the sustainability of food production. Bio comes from the Greek bios, meaning life, so essentially biodiversity means the variety of life. Why is it essential for sustainable food production? Because it's our natural capital. Biodiversity purifies, provides, regulates and supports essential services for sustainable food production. Kronberg and Ruskowski, 2018, Sunderland, 2011. Without biodiversity, both human and plant diseases will proliferate. Soils will erode, plants will lack pollination, our food systems would collapse. Sunderland, 2011. Increased biodiversity gives redundancy that enables losses without system collapse. Walker and Salt, 2006. For sustainable food production, essentially, soils need to be fit for purpose. That is, produce abundant, nutritious food, feed, fibre and fuels. There are 3 dynamic attributes that indicate if a soil is fit for purpose, namely its biological, chemical, physical attributes. Whilst all these attributes interact, biological is said to be key because it regulates the other 2. Food from poor soils have diminished nutritional composition and lack trace element minerals. We must restore soils and stop biodiversity loss for sustainable food production. Technology is applied knowledge and as such is essential for the sustainability of food production and can help with biodiversity loss and soil degradation. For example, precision agriculture can use infrared imaging to assess plant health to minimise the use of agrochemicals, which are generally detrimental to biology. However, my case study is biotechnology, particularly genetically engineered agricultural crops done through recombinant DNA technology, which is to recombine DNA fragments from different sources, even different species, to produce GMOs. Zayed, 1999. According to Merriam-Webster Dictionary, sustainable means to not deplete or permanently damage a resource. So, sustainability for food production means to not deplete nor permanently damage soil health and biodiversity. But there is more to it. Sustainability, according to Brundtland, 1987, needs to ensure present and future people's needs are met and includes social and economic dimensions, which I will address later. Today in the West, our farming system consists predominantly of monocultures and specialised farming systems, Otero 2014, which are unsustainable. Craney 2020, Edward Hilbeck 2001, Steiner et al. 2020. Economically, farms have been concentrated, eliminating many jobs in the sector. Environmentally, they deplete and pollute soils, water and biodiversity. FAO 2015, A and B, Sloan et al. 2014. Moreover, socially, not everyone has enough nutritious food to meet their needs, let alone future people's needs. Today, over 2 billion people go to bed hungry, are food insecure, undernourished or malnourished. They don't get the nutrients they require, especially micronutrients like vitamin A, zinc, iron and iodine. Roughly 250 million people worldwide suffer from vitamin A deficiency, which in children leads to blindness and respiratory and intestinal diseases and early death. Petricus, 2010. The current food system is failing them. Can technology assist? Supplementation, fortification, dietary diversification, and genetic enhancement are options to increase micronutrient intake. Swaminathan, 2010. Unfortunately, many people don't have access to a diverse diet, leaving 3 technologies that may be able to assist. Supplementation, according to Mayer et al. 2008, is expensive and unreliable. Fortification requires market access and money, which leaves genetic enhancement. But is it sustainable? This I will try to answer later. Presently, I would like to introduce GMOs. Much controversy surrounds GMOs, mostly from European media and anti-biotech lobby groups concerned with environmental and social aspects. Aoni, 2016, Stone, 2010. Biotechnologies, biofortified GMOs, proponents argue, will help to feed the world. Ferrer et al. 2011, Otera, 2014, Petricus, 2010. Biotechnology is important because it can do things natural breeding cannot do, such as create tolerance in plants to abiotic stresses, breed resistance to herbicides and insects, increase nutrients, and create novel nutrients in crops like engineer beta-carotene into rice. Let us consider some environmental aspects to sustainability. Biodiversity. GMBT crops reduce overall pesticide use, enabling abundant non-target insects, while HR, herbicide-resistant crops, increase the use of lower toxic herbicides. Bennett et al. 2013. However, insect and weed tolerance has begun. Irvin et al. 2011. GM has expanded the diversity of genes available for crop improvements. However, there are only a few GM crops, and if they are the only crops grown, this will reduce biodiversity. GM crops don't increase general agriculture's effect on biodiversity. Bennett et al. 2013. Soil health. HR crops encourage no-till farming, which reduces soil erosion and increases soil biodiversity, captures carbon, reduces fuel consumption, decreasing greenhouse gas emissions, and increases yields enabled by double cropping. Bennett et al. 2013. Gene flow is an issue if wild relatives are found nearby, and will result in a lack of genetic information, which the scientific community will need to eliminate for sustainability. Irvin et al. 2011, Mintz 2017. Genetically engineered plants can be bred to tolerate salinity, drought, and generally poor soils. They can grow where non-GE plants cannot, increasing yields. Bennett et al. 2013. However, the Jevons paradox, York and McKee, 2016, explains that increased efficiency, profitability, usually results in expansion rather than conservation, which suggests increased yields and reduces in fuel consumption will not reduce greenhouse gas emissions because profits will increase expansion. Bennett et al. 2013, Irvin et al. 2011. Environmental sustainability of biotechnologies, GMOs, will need to be assessed by a case-by-case basis. Social sustainability. Equity. Inter- and intra-generational. The intellectual property laws of GMOs are unjust because genetic engineering is a value for society that should not be monopolised by the rich at the expense of farmers who cannot save seeds. It's a distributive injustice, denying the positive economic right to equal access to resources. Toft, 2012. Equity of living beings. If we are in fact connected to all beings on Earth as a continuum, which many Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples argue, then what right do we have to alter the genes of other living beings, fixing their deficiencies, Lutz 2017, or playing God, Mintz 2017. Social values. Value for society. They are valuable because, as mentioned, they can do things traditional breeding cannot. Common good. They add to the common good because, as Mintz 2017 and I have expressed, GMOs can reduce pesticide use, increase yields, and increase profits for farmers, among many other benefits. Justice. Food security. Regulations and intellectual property rights have made the realisation of GMOs feeding the poor difficult, Petrikis 2010. Further, food security as a social and political problem cannot be solved through technological means, Scott 2011. Research, public versus private. Public research does the basic research, which private companies use in their profiteering patents, Bennett et al. 2013, which seems unjust. Self-sufficiency. GM crops localised to countries, e.g. the Global South, will assist their agricultural sustainability if they can save seeds. There are some elements in terms of equity and justice of social sustainability that might preclude GMOs, as they're governed today, from being included as essential for the sustainability of food production. To be economically sustainable, social and environmental sustainability need to be considered because they are the basis from which economic value is created. Eckert, 2012. A social aspect to consider is farm income and the sovereignty of farmers, people, to be able to buy what they want instead of being dependent on debt and advertising describing what they want. Eckert, 2012. GMOs may increase profits for farmers, but they also cause division and dependency for farmers on seed companies, affecting their physical and mental health. Dependency is not sustainability. Environmentally, economic sustainability must not deplete its resource base, which for this case study is genetic diversity. An issue I mentioned in the environmental slide is gene flow, which could result in a loss of genetic diversity, Mintz 2017, which will create an unhealthy and unsustainable environment. Economic. First-generation GM crops, especially BT, are economically sustainable for pest control, Irvin and colleagues, 2011. And it is far cheaper to develop and regulate GM crops than for supplementary programs to persist, or other industrial fortification programs, Mayer et al. 2008, which is accounting for present people's needs, except biotechnology companies look to maximise profits by focusing on large monocultures at the expense of poverty reduction and food security for poor countries. Moreover, the potential destruction of the genetic base will hinder future people's prospects. Presently, biotechnology needs to improve in its economic sustainability and social sustainability to be considered sustainable. If we need to increase food production by 70% by 2050, Rowell and Zerbriggen, 2020, GM crops can contribute to sustainable agriculture, Quaim, 2009. However, as I've expressed, biotechnology is not yet a sustainable enterprise, so to include it within sustainability of agriculture would affect this overall sustainability negatively. Nevertheless, nothing is perfect, so biotechnology could play an integral part solving some issues, but given food security is a political and social problem, then to solve it needed are political and social solutions, like reducing the wasted 1/3 to half of the food grown, McCarthy et al. 2018. Looking to the future, if we cannot figure out how to not waste, then the technology of GMOs may become necessary, but they are not sufficient. What is needed is complete stakeholder engagement, which includes consumers, to mitigate waste, conserve biodiversity, and improve soils. If we did not waste so much food, we would not have to increase production so dramatically that GE will be necessary. Waste does not occur on a sustainable system. Thank you.